Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, gripping tightly to an umbrella, fighting against the wind. The more you resist, the harder it gets. But what if instead you stood firm, breathed deeply, and let the storm pass? Life is this storm. We struggle, we chase, we worry, thinking that force and anxiety will bring us what we seek. But the Stoics knew the truth. Relax, and everything will come to you. Imagine you are holding a rope in a tug-of-war against an opponent far stronger than you. You pull with all your might, straining every muscle, refusing to let go. But the harder you pull, the more exhausted you become. What if, instead, you simply released the rope? The struggle would end instantly. This is the essence of one of Stoicism's most powerful principles, the dichotomy of control. At its core, the dichotomy of control teaches that life is divided into two categories: things we can control and things we cannot. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, put it simply: some things are up to us and some things are not. Everything within our control, our thoughts, actions, values, and decisions, should be our primary focus. Everything outside of our control, other people's opinions, external events, the past, the future, and even our own reputations, should be met with acceptance, not anxiety. The key to inner peace is recognizing this division and acting accordingly. Most of our suffering comes from resisting this reality. We waste energy trying to manipulate outcomes, worrying about how others perceive us, or stressing over circumstances beyond our influence. But when we shift our focus inward, directing our energy only toward what we can change, we free ourselves from unnecessary frustration. Picture a ship in the middle of the ocean. The captain cannot control the wind, the waves, or the storms, but he can control how he steers, how he adjusts the sails, and how he prepares for the journey. A wise captain does not curse the sea, he adapts to it. This principle does not mean passivity. Stoicism does not teach inaction, but rather right action. It encourages effort, discipline, and responsibility in areas where we have influence, while fostering acceptance in areas where we do not. Marcus Aurelius, Rome's philosopher-emperor, understood this well. His journal Meditations reveals a man burdened with immense responsibility, facing war, political strife, and personal loss, and yet he constantly reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This mindset allowed him to remain calm and effective in the face of adversity. Imagine someone insults you. You might instinctively feel anger, indignation, or the need to defend yourself. But pause for a moment. Is their insult within your control? No. What is within your control? Your response. You can choose to be offended, or you can choose to remain indifferent. The Stoic path is to let go of what does not belong to you. Their words are theirs, not yours. As Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The same principle applies to setbacks, failures, and disappointments. You may lose a job, experience heartbreak, or face an unexpected challenge. You cannot control these events, but you can control how you react. Will you dwell on what is lost, or will you focus on what can be done next? The first leads to misery, the second to resilience. This philosophy is deeply liberating. When you internalize it, you no longer fear the unpredictable nature of life. You understand that your happiness does not depend on external circumstances, but on your mindset. This is why the Stoics were able to remain calm even in the direst situations. Seneca, a Roman statesman, was ordered to take his own life by Emperor Nero. Rather than panic or despair, he met his fate with composure, knowing that while he could not control his death, he could control how he faced it. To live by the dichotomy of control is to practice true freedom. You are no longer a slave to external events, to the opinions of others, or to the constant worry of an uncertain future. Instead, you become anchored in what is truly yours, your choices, your principles, and your ability to act with wisdom and virtue. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, is this within my control? If yes, act. If no, let it go. By living this way, you will find the peace that so many chase, but so few attain. A seed does not become a tree overnight. The river does not carve through mountains in a single day. The sun rises and sets according to its own rhythm, indifferent to human impatience. Nature moves at its own pace, and yet we often find ourselves rushing, demanding that life unfold on our schedule. The Stoics understood that fighting against time and natural processes only leads to frustration. Instead, they taught the value of patience, trust, and alignment with the natural flow of events. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "Time discovers truth." This simple statement holds profound wisdom. We often seek immediate answers, instant results, and rapid progress, but some things cannot be forced. The right opportunities, the right people, and even personal growth all arrive in their own time. Trying to accelerate the process is like pulling on a plant to make it grow faster. It only causes harm. When we demand that life move faster, we create unnecessary suffering. We stress over why success has not come yet, why healing is taking so long, or why certain aspects of our lives are not where we want them to be. But what if we accepted that everything has its season? The Stoics remind us that control is an illusion when it comes to time. We can act, we can prepare, but we cannot dictate when things will happen. The universe follows its own logic, and it is far wiser than our impatience. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, often reflected on nature's effortless unfolding. He observed that the stars do not rush, the seasons do not falter, and yet everything arrives precisely when it is meant to. If the universe operates with such precision, why should we believe that our lives are any different? Perhaps what we are waiting for is not delayed, it is simply not yet ready. Or maybe we are the ones who are not yet ready for it. True peace comes from surrendering to this rhythm. Instead of resisting, we align ourselves with it. We do our part, plant the seed, tend the soil, show up each day. But we do not demand immediate results. By embracing the pace of nature, we free ourselves from frustration. We learn to trust that what is meant for us will arrive, not when we beg for it, but when the time is right. Picture a person lying in bed at night, unable to sleep because their mind is filled with worries. They imagine everything that could go wrong tomorrow, next week, or even years from now. They play out worst-case scenarios in their head, feeling the weight of problems that do not yet exist. This is the essence of worry. It is suffering in advance, borrowing pain from a future that may never come. The Stoics understood this flaw in human thinking and taught that worrying is one of the most useless and destructive habits we can develop. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, wisely said, "Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems." Most of the things we worry about never happen, and even when they do, they are rarely as terrible as we imagined. The mind has a tendency to exaggerate dangers, making small concerns feel like overwhelming disasters. But reality is often far kinder than our fears suggest. When we finally face the things we once worried about, we usually find that we are capable of handling them. Worry also distracts us from the present moment. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that we should focus on what is immediately in front of us, not waste energy fearing the unknown. The future is beyond our control, and excessive thinking about it robs us of the ability to enjoy the present. A person who spends today worrying about tomorrow sacrifices both days. Instead of being fully engaged in life, they are trapped in a cycle of fear about events that may never come to pass. This does not mean we should ignore potential dangers or avoid planning for the future. Stoicism does not promote carelessness, but rather a balanced approach. Prepare wisely, make thoughtful decisions, but do not dwell on imagined problems. Seneca offers a powerful insight. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Instead of assuming the worst, assume that you will be strong enough to handle whatever comes. Life is unpredictable. No matter how much we plan, things will not always go the way we want. We face setbacks, disappointments, and challenges that seem unfair. The Stoics, however, did not see these difficulties as obstacles but as necessary parts of life's design. They embraced a mindset called Amor, Fati, a deep love for one's fate. Instead of resisting what happens, they taught that we should accept, embrace, and even love it. The phrase Amor, Fati means love of fate. It is more than just acceptance. It is an active appreciation for everything that happens, good or bad. The Stoics believe that whatever occurs is not just something to endure, but something meant for us. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." In other words, life will throw challenges our way, but we can choose to use them as fuel for growth, rather than reasons for despair. This mindset transforms hardship into opportunity. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" we can ask, "How can I use this?" When faced with failure, rejection, or unexpected change, we can see it as part of a greater plan, one that shapes us into stronger, wiser individuals. Nothing is wasted when we embrace our fate fully. Even suffering has value when we learn from it. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, taught that resistance to fate is the root of much human misery. We often fight against reality, wishing things were different, but this only leads to frustration. The river does not resist the rocks in its path. It flows around them, adapting to the course it is given. In the same way, we should move with life rather than against it. This philosophy does not mean we should be passive. Amor Fati is not about giving up or refusing to take action. Instead, it means doing our best while accepting that the outcome is beyond our control. If a door closes, it was not our door to walk through. If a plan fails, it was not the right path for us. The more we embrace this truth, the more peace we find. To love your fate is to trust that every event, whether joyful or painful, plays a role in your journey. Life is happening for you, not to you. When you truly live this way, nothing can shake your inner peace. In a chaotic world filled with noise, urgency, and endless distractions, stillness is often mistaken for weakness or passivity. Society glorifies busyness, equating constant movement with progress. But the Stoics understood that true strength does not come from frantic action, it comes from stillness. A calm and steady mind is far more powerful than one that is restless and reactive. Marcus Aurelius, a warrior and emperor, faced immense pressure every day. Yet in his private writings, he emphasized the power of inner stillness. He wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea still falls around it." The lesson is clear. Life will bring storms, challenges, and chaos, but we do not have to be swept away by them. Strength is not in overpowering the storm, but in standing firm despite it. Stillness does not mean inaction. It means having control over your emotions, your reactions, and your thoughts. A person who is calm under pressure is far more effective than someone who panics. Imagine a skilled archer. If they rush their shot, flinch, or let emotions take over, they will miss their target. But if they breathe, steady their hand, and focus, they will hit their mark. Life operates the same way. The calmer and more composed we are, the better we navigate difficulties. The world often provokes us, demanding immediate reactions. Someone insults us, and we feel the urge to respond in anger. A situation frustrates us, and we feel compelled to act impulsively. But Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. True strength is the ability to pause, reflect, and choose a response rather than being controlled by emotions. Stillness also allows for clarity. When the surface of a lake is disturbed, it becomes impossible to see through the water. But when it is calm, everything below is visible. The mind functions the same way. When we quiet unnecessary thoughts, we gain insight, wisdom, and the ability to make better decisions. To cultivate stillness is to cultivate power. It is the strength to remain unshaken by circumstances, the ability to act with wisdom instead of impulse, and the peace that comes from knowing that true control lies not in the world around us, but within us. We often measure success by outcomes. If we achieve our goal, we feel happy. If we fail, we feel disappointed. This mindset makes our well-being dependent on external results, things we cannot always control. The Stoics, however, taught a different approach. Focus on the action itself, not the outcome. Do what is right, put in the effort, and then let go. This is the principle of action without attachment. Imagine an archer preparing to shoot an arrow. They train for years, perfect their stance, steady their breath, and aim carefully. But once they release the arrow, the outcome is no longer in their hands. The wind might shift, the target might move, or 100 other factors might interfere. A wise archer does not despair over a missed shot. They simply adjust and shoot again. The same applies to life. We control our efforts, but we do not control everything that follows. The Stoics believed that attachment to outcomes leads to unnecessary suffering. If you work hard for a promotion but don't get it, attachment makes you feel defeated. If you invest in a relationship and it doesn't work out, attachment makes you feel like you wasted time. But if you see the effort itself as valuable, independent of the result, you remain at peace. You did your part. That is enough. As Epictetus taught, do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. This mindset does not mean indifference. Stoicism does not teach passivity or lack of ambition. Instead, it encourages full commitment to the task at hand, but without the burden of expectation. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, constantly reminded himself to focus on doing his duty without concern for praise or reward. He wrote, "Do not be overheard complaining, not even to yourself." He knew that attachment to external results leads to disappointment, while dedication to the process leads to inner freedom. Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, emphasized that external success is never fully within our control. You might build a great business, only for the economy to crash. You might work tirelessly on a project, only for circumstances to change. If your happiness depends on everything going your way, life will be a constant battle against disappointment. Instead, the Stoics teach that true success is in how we conduct ourselves, not in what we achieve. If we act with virtue, integrity, and effort, we have already succeeded, regardless of the result. This philosophy applies to every area of life. In relationships, you can love someone deeply, treat them well, and still lose them. But if you love without attachment to control, you will cherish the experience rather than resent the loss. In creative work, you can pour your heart into a project, but if it does not gain recognition, you should not see it as wasted effort. The act of creating was worthwhile in itself. Even in everyday tasks, whether exercising, learning, or helping others, the focus should be on the action, not on external rewards. By practicing action without attachment, we develop resilience. We are no longer controlled by fear of failure or by the highs and lows of success. We act because it is the right thing to do, because effort itself is meaningful. This way of living brings deep peace and freedom. We learn to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. And in doing so, we discover that true success is not in outcomes, but in the way we live each moment.